Hi, it's David Stokes of Convalido Consulting here again with our final video on the use of the Convalido Data Lifecycle Modeling tool. In this video we're going to look at how we can take our shape data, how we can export that in the form of a risk assessment and the various options we have for doing that. So in video number 4 we created this data lifecycle diagram you can see here. We didn't add all the data. Well, rather than have you watch me go through all of that laborious process, you've seen in previous videos what all the data attributes are and how they can be entered. I'm going to go to our example, which actually has a predefined data lifecycle diagram in here. This is something that is part of the stencil which you can download, so you can actually look at this to get an idea of how we've created this example. Just to walk you through this example, we've taken the example of a simple batch reactor. We've assumed that just two of the process parameters are pharmaceutical product critical quality attributes. So the temperature and the stirrer speed are the examples we've chosen here. So very simply we can see the temperature data comes in through a temperature controller. Obviously the controller is controlling the temperature, but it's also the source of the temperature data. The information on the speed of the stirrer comes from a PLC system, and again we can follow the life cycle through. So if we just walk through the temperature controller, we have a single point of data that's acquired, that's processed to give it a unit of measure, to give it a range, for instance. So we're adding metadata here as part of the processing, as part of the process control, and then we basically move the data. No data is retained in the temperature controller. The data is moved into a distributed control system where again there's some further processing. We'll be doing possibly some more ranging here. We'll be doing some alarm processing, for instance. We'll be doing some trending. That's all part of the processing operation. We have some temporary storage of the alarms and the trend data, and that data is then copied into a batch record. Something very similar for the stirrer speed. That comes through the PLC. We acquire that data. We do some processing. There may be some linearization, ranging, metadata added. In this case, we've got some temporary storage of data within the PLC. That is then overwritten when the data is moved into the distributed control system. Again, we're doing some trending, we're doing some alarm processing, temporary storage, and that's copied into a batch record. The batch record is stored long term, but we're also taking a copy of the batch record, and that's going to the network attached storage as part of the system backup processing. So that's showing the detailed data lifecycle for these two critical quality attributes. Again, more typically there's going to be lots of other data involved with this process, but we're only using this tool to model the high risk data. And for each of these items of data, if we go to our data shape, we can see we've got all of that information filled in. Let me just move that. That's fine. So you can move these things around, as you can see. So we can see here we've got our stirrer speed. It's owned by the plant engineering manager. System is the PLC. And again, we've got all of our risk scenarios defined. We have our controls, our permissions defined, and so on. So in this example, we have all of the steps in the process are fully defined. All this data has been filled in. What we now want to do is to be able to document that in a more useful format. Obviously, the data is stored as part of Visio. And what we've done is we've used the capability that Visio has to associate data with shapes and then either to import or export that data. And what we've done is we've created a standard report definition to be able to access all of this information from here. I'm just going to close this information down just for a moment. So what I'm going to do now is go to the review option. Let me just pin that in place for a moment. And we can see here there is an option called shape reports. This is where you can create reports based upon shape data. as you can see from the comment there, those can be exported in a number of formats: Excel, HTML, XML. Probably Excel and XML are the most useful. So if I click on that, now you can see that there's a report already there, but what we're looking for is that second file you'll have downloaded from the Convalido website. So if I click on Browse here, and it's actually in this directory here which I can click on, and here's that second file, Data Lifecycle Full Risk Assessment Report. It outputs all of the data attributes for the shapes. So I'm going to select that and open it. Now I've got two options here. One is to run and one is to modify. To start with, I'll just select run, and you can choose the format. Again, Excel is one obviously everybody can use. XML might be useful if, for instance, you want to develop a macro to import this data into Microsoft Word documents, for instance. But I'm just going to select Excel, click OK, and you'll see it generates the report. Now there are, I think, 16 steps, and here that is. So you can see that's now generated an Excel spreadsheet, all the steps listed in order, the operation described, and all of that information: data name, data owner, system description, storage options, storage periods, risk scenarios, the pre-mitigation, risk assessments, the controls. They're all in here. And again, you can copy and paste this, reformat the spreadsheet however you need to put that into the rest of your documentation. So that's the power of using the shape attributes associated with those shapes. Now, if you have added your own attributes to these shapes, which you can do, we talked about that in an earlier video, you have the option of being able to edit that report as well. I'll just close this down. I won't save that. So if I go again into shape reports, click on that again, I'll browse to the report. What you may want to do is move this VRD file to somewhere you can more easily find. But if I click on that and select open, what I can now do is select modify, and this allows me to modify this report and save it as a different version. So I'm going to select all the shapes on the current page. You can select shapes or shapes that are selected, and under advanced you can put conditions. And just to show you, I've defined a criterion which basically says only select the shapes where the attribute step exists. Essentially what that means is we don't export the data associated with all the connection points and all the other things on the diagram. So it's only those shapes that have a step number that will be exported. Just thought I'd show you that. You probably want to leave that alone. I'll cancel that. If we go next, and this is where you can select which items of data are exported. Now you can see by default I only have check marks in the boxes that are associated with the data operations, but you could also choose, if you wanted to export the data associated with the electronic record, to export those items of data as well. So using this particular dialog box here, you can check and select which items of data are exported. You can then choose how you're going to sort. So this is the order in which I want the columns in the spreadsheet to be listed. You can move these up or down as you wish, and you can choose to sort, and I've sorted by step number as the most obvious one. You can then put sub sorts as well. So again, you can just use this to define to export less data or more data. You can save it with a different name. So we could, for instance, say short form if we missed out some of those, and save it in a file. I'll give that a name as well. And now if I ran that, that would be a change report. So that's how to export the data. Do with it what you wish.